had some chicks. E-I-E-I-O. With a chick here and a chick there. Here a chick, there a chick, everywhere a chick. Old MacDonald had a farm. E-I-E-I-O. Old MacDonald had a farm. E-I-E-I-O. And on his farm he had some dogs. E-I-E-I-O. With a woof woof here and a woof woof there. Here a woof, there a woof, everywhere a woof woof. Old MacDonald had a farm. E-I-E-I-O.
Alright, I am Carrie Brothers, and by the time you see this little video here, here we go. By the time you see that video there, you've already seen the intro and the talk on child development. I'm going to bring up another video if I can find it real quickly here for y'all to watch. And then I will talk to you about why you're watching it. Alright, so let me make sure the camera is back on me. Yes, okay. So what we're talking about today is language and language development. And this actually is something we touched on briefly when we were talking about child development. But because so much emphasis is on reading and writing these days, we do need to stick a separate section in that talks really more in depth about language development, because so much is going on in the young child's brain with language in the first 2 or 3, 4 years after birth. Let me pull my PowerPoint over here for you and see what we can get going on that. Alright, so the reason I played for you, first of all, Father Abraham and Old MacDonald, is because those are songs, and songs, of course, have words in them, okay? And music has kind of a special way of triggering memories for us. And we remember songs for a lifetime. There are a lot of things that I can remember, too, in song that I cannot remember on my own, and I have to come up with old songs that I learned in childhood. So these words put in a special play to music actually can make learning a lot easier, which is why in a lot of good classrooms you will hear teachers singing directions to kids, or learning different things through song. And you even see this through grade school, as children, as they get older, start having to learn about states or countries or planets, or multiplication tricks and things like that. They'll put them to song, and it's because, again, that music in combination with the words actually makes things a little bit easier to remember. So we're going to talk a little bit here about how young children learn language. We know that language is what it says here: a system of sounds, syllables, words, gesture, signs, tone of voice, and invented words or silly sounds used to convey a meaning. It's not just one thing. There's a lot involved in language. It is the combination of sounds coming out. There's a lot that comes with tone of voice and body language. With children, there are a lot of invented words. We always sometimes use silly sounds to convey what we're trying to say. And we are actually born with the capacity to make 40 sounds. Through time, the brain begins to make associations between sounds and objects, and a combination of these capabilities allows the creation of language. So we have language at this point. You know that babies start off not being able to understand immediately, and they are not able to produce words, but they are taking it in, and they are beginning to begin to associate much earlier on than we would think different words. But they can't do that until they start off hearing sounds. Do you remember how we learned in the module on child development that more complex builds on basic? Basically, they come out and they're crying, and then they start to make more and more deliberate sounds. They begin to associate those sounds with meanings, and eventually words start coming together. We do have 3 different types of language here. We have receptive language, and that is what the children understands about what is being said to them. Of course, we have, as adults, receptive language either, how we understand what is being said to us. We have expressive language, and that is how we actually portray what we're thinking, and our feelings, and our thoughts, and our ideas. And then pragmatics here, we have the social and emotional use of language. How are we going to actually use language? How are we going to actually use language to communicate with people? Young children vary greatly in their linguistic styles and how they learn to receive, use, and even invent language. And so, just like everything else, there is a typical, there is a normal, but everyone is going to learn language a little bit differently. But it's all going to fall into similar patterns. So we're going to talk real briefly here about language development stage by stage. We didn't really in here put a whole lot about language before 18 months, but we'll just briefly talk about that. You know that babies are born and they can cry. Like we said a minute ago, they can cry. They've been hearing language for several months, 2 to 3 to 4 months from before they were born, but they don't understand what it means at this point, so they're crying. But they're already used to hearing sound. They're already used to the cadence of their mom's voice. Some babies at birth can recognize music that they've heard a lot during the pregnancy. They cry a lot, and then they begin to coo. And what cooing is basically just kind of like vowels sounded out. Ah, ee, ooh. And then babbling starts, which is the combination of consonants and vowels. Ba, 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 ma, 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 that type of thing. And somewhere around 12 months, you're going to probably hear the child's first word. It's usually going to be something like dada or dog. That D sound is generally easier to pronounce than kind of the M sound. You would kind of expect that mama would be the first word. A lot of times the word dada comes before mama. All right, so at around 12 months, you're going to probably hear the first word, although there's, like I said, there's a big range. That can come earlier, and that can come, a good bit later also. So at around 18 months here, kids are going to start using lots of single words. They're bringing in a lot of language. Their receptive language is very, very strong, so they've got a lot of words, and they're going to start experimenting with those. Lots of single words are going to come out here. They're going to be mostly using words like nouns and verbs. Me, dog, cow, go, run, those types of things. And just 6 months later, they're going to really start to begin to use 2 and 3 word phrases. A lot of times you're going to hear things they call, I forgot what it was called. It's when the words come together, but all unnecessary words are taken out. Basically what that boils down to is that they're 2 and 3 word phrases here. And they're going to really begin to understand what others are saying more and more. At about 30 months here, you're going to start seeing a lot of negatives in what they're saying. They ask a lot of why, what's that, where, and things like that. They're going to begin to name different colors, and they're going to understand the names of different people. They can, of course, identify their mom and the dad. They've been doing that for some time, but they might be able to start talking about friends, aunts and uncles, and things like that. But remember, we're still only at 2, 3, 4 word sentences. At around 3 years old, about 36 months, they're going to understand tunes, or they're going to be able to sing similar tunes, familiar tunes. ask lots more of these W questions: whose, what's, why's. They're going to understand a lot of these prepositions, like under, behind, on, and they can designate the actions associated with objects and pictures. There are a lot of times communication difficulties in young children, and the reason that it's important that we talk about that is because I think a lot of times communication problems are what make us think that the child is being bad. Really, it's just they can't communicate many times. So before we start, getting on to kids because they're being difficult in the classroom, we need to try to evaluate what's going on. We need to try to determine the communication level. First of all, can the child focus on and attend to others? Are they actually able to do that? If they actually are not able to focus on and to pay attention, they're sure not going to behave. They're going to have a hard time doing that. That's where receptive language is coming in. If they're not focusing on, they're not receiving language. We need to be looking about how well the child relates to others, and how purposeful is the child. We need to ask ourselves if the child understands what he or she is hearing. Is that receptive language actually doing what it's supposed to do? How does the child organize a vocal response that we commonly call words? How does he put words together? How does he put phrases together? Is he able to kind of decipher what people's nonverbal language is? And does he understand and does he comprehend what he actually sees with his eyes? And most of the time there are no problems at all. Sometimes there are problems. One, delayed speech is a big one here that you'll see sometimes. They will prefer their parenting, their parents' language. A lot of times the over-attentive parent speaks for the child, and because the over-attentive parent is speaking for the child all the time, the child is not going to want to speak for himself. Sometimes there's delayed speech because they're bilingual homes. English is a second language in a lot of homes, and so speech is going to be a little bit delayed at that point. However, we want to always encourage parents, if mom speaks a different language than a dad, that both speak that language in the home. This is a very critical time in picking up languages. It is a lot easier to pick up on a second or third language when the child is 2 and 3 years old than it is when the child is 14 or 15 years old. So their expressive language may seem a little bit delayed, but their receptive language is not. They're picking up on it, and they're holding on to it, and their brain is processing it. So yes, encourage any parents in your class that may have parents of different languages in the home to use both languages. When we talk about speech impairments, we talk about sound quality, conversation, meaning, and responsiveness. If you think that a child in your classroom may have some type of speech delay, don't go talking to everybody about it, of course, because we're having to maintain confidentiality. But you may want to suggest to the parent, if he or she is concerned, that they check with their pediatrician for some type of evaluation if they're uncomfortable with it. A lot of these things people are uncomfortable with, and honestly they just work themselves out. It just takes a little bit of time to work through some of these issues. Alright, so we need to talk here about the language explosion. Language develops very quickly, and it seems like it doesn't, because there are a couple of years where it doesn't sound like the baby is hearing much or saying much. There's a lot going on, okay? Language begins from birth. It says here, I would say from before birth until 5. That is a very, very critical time in this language development. Like it says here, generally around 18 months, language explosion occurs. 1,000 to 2,000 words by age 2. They know 1,000 to 2,000 words. They may not be saying all those words, but they understand all those words. Between 18 and 36 months, language occurs very, very quickly. Babbling becomes very deliberate in tone, and children literally learn new words every day. Okay, they babble, they babble, they babble. It may sound like they're actually saying real words, but because the tone is there, they get that the intonation means something, and eventually those words, that babbling with that intonation is going to turn into words. They're going to begin to combine words into short phrases. Want juice, no juice, go bye-bye. This is called telegraphic speech. This is kind of what the term I was trying to come up with a few minutes ago and couldn't come up with it a few minutes ago. And that is when a lot of the extra words are taken out. So we know that grammar, different languages have different grammar, and what grammar is basically the organization that makes language work. We all had to be in grammar classes in elementary school and middle school and junior high. This is how we figured out, very literally on a piece of paper, how sentences are put together. But if the child is being talked to a whole lot and is being read to a whole lot, grammar is going to come very naturally to them. It might be very difficult for them as they get older to explain why they're saying things the way that they're saying them, but they've got it down. Their brain knows how it works just by listening to proper grammar in the native tongue. Between 24 and 30 months, they have a basic sense of their native language structure, of their native language grammar. They've got it. They've got it. Let's see here what we've got. I am going to shut down this PowerPoint and bring up a video for y'all to watch, if I can find it here, on the language explosion. And this is pretty interesting stuff. I'm going to have to play around with the volume for a second to make sure that y'all can hear it, but I'll go ahead and get it started. And this is about 9 or 10 minutes.
Sounds they have been practicing, the meanings they have attributed to them, all seem to come together. Suddenly they grasp the idea that everything has a name. A new phrase enters their vocabulary. What's that? A great mental leap is taking place. The phenomenon is called the language explosion. What is it that the baby human pays attention to that helps speed up the learning of new words?
Oh no, he's easier. What would you do? Would you pet him?
To find out, Susan Jones and her colleagues developed a special study.
Can you say Tika? Tika, good job.
Maya is a 17-month-old toddler.
In the basket.
She is in the early stages of language learning and has about 50 words in her vocabulary.
Go with my Tika.
This is her first of 8 weekly sessions with a researcher.
Hey, see the Tika? You say bye-bye, Tika. Bye-bye, Tika. Phew. God. Look at my razzle. Look at my razzle.
The researcher shows her a series of objects which have been given invented names.
Oh, good job. Oh. Can I get another razzle? Can I get another razzle? Look. Here's my other razzle. I'm gonna put it on my finger.
They have the same shape, but are made of different colors and materials.
Razzle on your nose. Yeah. You put the razzle in the basket?
By participating in these training sessions, Maya is learning to pay special attention to shape.
Take the basket. Oh, look at that razzle.
Researchers wanted to determine whether shape is an aid in learning new
Look
words.
at this. This is not a razzle. We don't want to play with that one. We'll put it back.
Mallory is almost 2 years old. She has completed her 8th weekly visit and has now come back to be tested.
Wood. It's a wood. Can you say wood?
Wood.
That's a wood.
She is shown an object and told its name is a wug. Then she is shown a group of objects which all have common features, but only one is similar in shape.
This. Can you find me another wood?
When asked to find another wug, Mallory identifies it by its shape rather than by any other trait.
Okay, Mallory, look at this one now. This is a
Researchers concluded that shape is crucial for learning the names of things. In fact, these studies have shown that the vocabulary of children who have been trained to pay special attention to shape increased by more than 3 times as much as other children.
All right, thank you very much.
During the language explosion, children shift into the next stage of language development. From isolated words, they move to micro-sentences of 2 words. The enunciation is still far from perfect, and it often takes someone familiar with the child to translate.
What's this? Chicken? What's a chicken says? Quack. Quack, quack, quack. Which color is that? Red. You want to put it on? Come on. You do it. You put it up here.
It's an exciting time. New vistas open up.
What else?
Their playing changes dramatically now.
Shall I eat croissant? Very nice talking, yeah.
Adults often see themselves mirrored in actions and in words.
The spoon, you can take it like this. Yummy. Which flavor is that?
A great flowering of the imagination takes place as playtime becomes filled with language. It takes a huge amount of effort, but it's all worth it in the end.
Good, delicious.
So the human animal is the only one who received the gift of speech.
Now let's put the violin.
As children begin to speak, their inner world becomes visible. How they reason, solve problems, and plan actions are all reflected in the way they assemble words into more and more complex thoughts.
Could you in the rain?
It's the end of the day, and Miranda is getting ready for bed.
Train, that's right.
At 22 months, she is in the midst of her language explosion. It's a time when the baby human learns a minimum of 1 new word every 90 minutes.
Eat green eggs and
By the time they reach 2 years of age, they typically use over 300 words and understand about 1,000. These early years are the critical time for learning language, and early interaction with parents is when the seed for communication skills is planted. Like all other babies, Miranda has learned to talk by listening to and imitating the adults in her environment. The games and songs of childhood are critical to the process. Bedtime is a time for quiet, to be alone. Miranda uses these moments before falling asleep to rehearse what she has learned during the day. She must process an overwhelming deluge of new language, new concepts. Her baby years have passed. She is now on the threshold of moving into childhood. In a short 2 years of life, Miranda has accomplished an amazing amount of work. She has gone from cooing to babbling syllables and finally to words. She is learning that you can play with language and put words together in unexpected ways that allow her to think new thoughts. Language is an indispensable part of being human. It allows humans to express feelings, to reflect on the past and imagine a future. For the baby human, a whole new way of relating to the world is about to open up. One they can't even begin to dream of.
Let me see if I can pull the PowerPoint back over here for you guys. That was so interesting. I mean, they said during the language explosion, the kids are learning no fewer than one new word every 90 minutes. That is really, really, really crazy. Okay. We use language to express our intentions, describe our feelings, and help us to understand the ideas of others. Word knowledge is among the most critical pieces of language development, and a print-rich environment is crucial to literacy success. And that's something I'd like for us to really talk about right now. Before we do that, actually, I am going to hold something in my hand, and you can't see me right now, so you have no idea what it is. But I'm holding something in my hand right now, and I'm going to describe it to you. I want you to listen to my words, and I want you to tell me what... I'm sorry, I just got distracted for a second. I want to describe it to you and have you kind of tell yourself what you think it is. I'm holding something, and it's round. When I put my arm around it, when I put my hand around it, it doesn't quite touch. My fingers don't quite touch. It stays round from the bottom to the top. It has a lid on it, and it's got this pokey thing coming out of the top. And the pokey thing, when I put my mouth on it and I suck, then I will get something out. Okay, so if I was saying this to a group of kids, do you think that they would have come up with the word cup? I hope you did. Games like this are great for kids, listening games, helping them to understand and process and apply these words are great as the kids get up into, 2.5, 3, 4, 5 years old. Of course, the younger the child, you're going to want to make it the more simple and simple of an object. All right. So we want to help children learn how to express themselves. What does talking have to do with feeling? Okay, I want you to think about, what does talking have to do with feeling, with talking? Children just weeks old are beginning to babble and cue, and children also discover that the words can call forth mental images of people or things, and that's actually a pretty interesting concept, because there is a point in time with each child when they discover that words can bring forward pictures in their minds of what's going on or the object that's being spoken about. When we're setting communication goals with kids, we're talking about furthering each child's emerging self-esteem. As they communicate, they will have a better self-esteem. When they are communicating better, they'll probably be able to encourage, we'll be able as adults to encourage developing empathy in the children. And good communication between the teacher and the child is going to help pull together a more meaningful curriculum so that the children can learn more. as we talk about communicating through the day, we've got lots of talk going on. We've got loud talk. This is the loud talk that you might have when you are sitting in front of a group at circle time and you're having to talk, fairly loudly to communicate with several different people at the same time. There's spontaneous talk that you probably are not going to even remember having said. And then you've also got quiet talk. Quiet is spelled incorrectly there. Sorry about that. Quiet talk is when you're sitting down with a child and you're sitting and you're reading, and it's more quiet, and it's more quiet and more subdued and a little bit more personal. So here we go. I had just mentioned a second ago that we were going to talk about creating a language-rich environment for children. This is really important. This is really important because while we're not trying to teach children to read at age 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 necessarily, we want them to be familiar with what words look like, so that when they are ready to read, their brains will be prepped and it should come pretty easily for them. Structuring a safe environment that lets children know that their ideas and ways of communicating are valued and respected. And so we want to create an environment where we're writing down what the kids are saying, and we're showing them that what they have to say is important. They will be able to start seeing their words, their thoughts on paper. We need to foster convention of communication, helping children to learn to look to take turns and to negotiate verbal conflicts. And so what we have here is we're talking about language development, and we're talking about social skills. How are language and social skills working together? So with this, we have a language-rich environment. So we're talking to the kids about communicating with each other. We're talking to the kids about working through conflicts with each other. And we're letting kids know that what they have to say is valuable. All right, what is early literacy? What is early literacy? Everything children know about reading and writing before they can actually read and write. Y'all, we do not have to teach kids how to read when they're 2 and 3 and even 4 years old. We just don't have to do it. 2-year-olds, 99% of 2-year-olds are not ready to sit down and learn letters. And so sitting down and trying to teach them letters of the alphabet is an exercise in frustration for everybody, because they just aren't going to get it. They might be able to come up with the right answers, but it's going to be through rote. It's going to mean nothing to them. So what we want to do is we want to expose them to letters. We want them to see lots of words in books. We want them to see lots of words on the wall. We want them to see their name written in lots of different places. Okay? So early literacy with young babies is a baby who looks at the pictures in a book, or the baby who chews a book, because you all know when you give anything to a young baby, they are just going to stick it up to their mouth and they're going to chew on it. And that is okay. That is okay for young babies. I'm sure most people in here have had a toddler sitting in their lap that wanted the same book read to them over and over and over and over again. And that's okay. That's normal. That's good. Because with that repetition, they may start actually picking up on different words. They're recognizing the pattern. They're learning that you read from left to right. They're learning that you turn the pages this way. They're learning that you read from up to down. They're beginning to associate, even if they can't recognize, they're beginning to associate the words on the page to the story and to the pictures in the book. Early literacy, like it says here, is not the teaching of reading. That will come. That will come. Very few kids are really ready for that before they're about 5 or 6. And again, if we push them too early, they're not going to enjoy doing it, and it's not going to work out later on. Studies are showing that even for those kids who do learn how to read super early on, it all evens out by about 3rd grade or so. And what has happened is that in a lot of circumstances, you have robbed the child from the enjoyment of being a kid. And it's just not going to work out in their favor later on. So 6 early literacy skills. We've got vocabulary, print motivation, print awareness, narrative skills, letter knowledge, and phonological awareness. These are all going to be things that, of course, as the child gradually gets older and older, they're going to pick up on. As far as letter knowledge goes, they may start picking up on that when they're when they're 3 or 4 or 5. They're probably going to start picking up on letters that are in their name early on. When I was in the classroom, if I had a child named Madison and she saw the letter M in any word, like the word Monday, she would get so excited because her letter M was in another word, which means that she is enjoying reading, what she can do with reading, and she's able to pick M out of her environment, and that is good. That is good. All right, we are talking about what role we as providers actually provide in communicating with language. We're observing communication with kids. We are fostering group communication. We're trying to provide activities for the kids to do together that will help them communicate with each other. We're providing for them a language-rich curriculum, dramatic presentations, lots of puppets, lots of reading, things like that, speaking, group games. We're encouraging communication one-on-one with us and the child, and encouraging communication between the child and another child. This one-to-one communication is important. And then storytelling and reading with expression. I just have to say that reading needs to be done in the classroom at least a couple of times a day. It just does. As a large group, and even more with smaller groups. Reading is so important. Reading to children is so important with the kids. I'm going to bring the camera back on me, and I've got a couple of books here. One that I'm sure all of you have read before, and this is Brown Bear, What Do You See? And I'm going to read it to you. And I know you've all read it 100 million times before, but we're going to go ahead and read it. This is written by Bill Martin. We love Bill Martin, and we love Eric Carle. And we'll read it. Brown bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. Red bird, what do you see? I see a yellow duck looking at me. Okay, one of the reasons we want board books, of course, with young children is because they're more durable, and the little bitties love to chew on them. Yellow duck, what do you see? I see a blue horse looking at me. Blue horse, what do you see? I see a green frog looking at me. Green frog, what do you see? I see a purple cat looking at me. Purple cat, what do you see? I see a white dog looking at me. White dog, what do you see? I see a black sheep looking at me. I have a hard time with the angle when I'm looking at it from my position in the room. Black sheep, what do you see? I see a goldfish looking at me. Goldfish, what do you see? I see a teacher looking at me. Teacher, what do you see? I see children looking at me. Children, what do you see? We see a brown bear, a red bird, a yellow duck, a blue horse, a green frog, a purple cat, a white dog, a black sheep, a goldfish, and a teacher looking at us. That's what we see. All right, in this book, there's several things that you need to see that are important. One is that it is a board book. This particular edition is a board book. And board books, like I said, are great for toddlers because they're more durable. Board books are great for babies because they're going to chew on them. They're eventually going to fall apart with all the chewing, but this is a good place to start. Although there is a brand of books called Indestructibles, and those books are basically indestructible, very difficult to fall apart, and so babies can chew on them and they won't get soggy or anything. But anyway, it's a board book. Another very simple drawings. They're not overcomplicated. very straight lines, very, very, very bright colors, okay? These are things that kids love. We don't want to overdo it. A lot of times the more complex it is, the easier they're going to lose interest. And we don't want that to happen. We see a lot of repetition. This whole book is repetition. Brown bear, what do you see? I see a, what does he see? I forgot. A red bird looking at me. Red bird, what do you see? I see a yellow duck looking at me. Lots of repetition all through the book. After you've read this book to the child several times, he or she is going to know how to read it. Right? They're going to know how to read it. They're going to enjoy sitting there on their own and going through it on their own. There's some rhyming, an element of rhyming in here, and rhyming is very important. There is research that shows that rhyming is extremely important in early literacy. There's a lot of rhyming in songs. We started off talking about songs. And remember, songs, they're easy to remember because it's music set to words. A lot of the same thing has to do with rhyming words. It just sticks in our brains easier. Reading is so important. Research shows that reading is very, very important to children. I'm going to bring this down here, if I can figure out how to do it, and there we go, my PowerPoint back up here. All right, so something that you can do in your classroom to encourage literacy, to encourage language, are these things called experience charts. You can bring, like, for instance, this person brought a pumpkin into the classroom and had the kids describe the pumpkin. They were writing down what the kids said. Okay, so they had two questions. What does the inside of a pumpkin look like, and what does the outside of a pumpkin look like? And you let the kids describe it. This is going to be more for 3, 4, 5 years old, but 3 and 4 and 5-year-old kids. But you're going to let them talk, and you're going to write down what they say. They're seeing here that what they have to say is important. They're getting to experiment with words. They're getting to hear new words. Some kids in the class have never heard the word ripples before, or slippery before, or slimy before, and so this is a great time for them to be exposed to new words and how to use those new words. They're also learning, when you do this again, that you read and write from up to down and from left to right. They're learning by looking at this and by looking at words in books that there are spaces between words. These are these basic things that they need to know just through exposure, so that when it's time for them to actually start reading, they'll have some of these foundational things in. And then after you do something like this, similar activity, be sure that you have the kid write their name, or if they can't do it, you write their name and hang it up. Again, that's letting them know that what they have to say is important. It's important and it's newsworthy, and it needs to be celebrated. So we as providers need to have some things in mind as we are providing activities for children. We need to embed new words with familiar context. You all remember in grammar school you had to learn, you use the term context clues. What does the word mean based on the other words around it? So yeah, when you're reading to a child, don't skip over the longer words. Read the longer words to the kid. Let them figure out what it means. If they need help, talk them through it. They're not going to learn new words unless new words are introduced to them. So I wouldn't sit down and read them some long novel or something. But yes, read them age-appropriate books and introduce to them new words in books. I would even say in conversation. Don't baby talk them. Talk to them like people and let them pick up on these words. Ask open-ended questions. Don't say things like, what's that? Or that's pretty. Ask them questions. Ask them questions like, oh, I see that you did this to your painting. Can you tell me why? Or that sure looks like it's a cold ocean, or a warm beach. What do you think the children are going to be enjoying doing out on the beach today? Let them think through these things. We want to give them lots and lots of exposure to hearing language and to opportunities to express language. Changing the language of your daily routines. You want to keep your routine basically the same, but yeah, kind of switch your words around in daily language. Bond with children through language. Talk to them. Hug them. Talk to them while you're hugging them. All of this is going to help to promote language development. Use writings and drawings. Yes, draw. When they draw, write down what they're drawing. Write down their stories. Read aloud to the kids, very important. Again, we want kids to be read to. They need kids to be read to. When you're writing down what they have to say, don't change their words. Write down exactly what they say. The grammar may not be correct, and that's okay right now. We're not looking for grammar to be correct. What we're looking for is that they're trying to express themselves and that they are experimenting with different things. In the classroom, just make sure you've got a lot of stuff that's going to promote communication. Lots of pencils, lots of paper, lots of crayons, lots of markers. And you don't have to keep all of the stuff like this in one area of the classroom. People think they need to keep all the art stuff in the art area and writing stuff in the writing area, but why not mix it up? Why not put a clipboard with some paper and pencils in the kitchen so that kids can write down lists in the kitchen of what they want to buy from the store like their mom and dad. This is the building of language, and this is the building of literacy. Maybe put the pencil and a piece of paper and a clipboard in the block center so they can draw plans or write down their plans or list of things they need to build their next thing. We're trying to understand here that things are not areas of development are not separate. They're all working together. This cognitive and this language is also coming together with the physical of building and the social of building as a team. I kind of got in my head of myself a little bit there, but yeah, communication around the classroom. In the dramatic play area, have several phones for kids to be talking on. That is a great, cheap way to give children the opportunity to communicate in the classroom. Have several phones, have a couple of toys so they don't have to fight. Everything's great communication. Have books that tell the same story in different ways. I wish I had them with me, but I know that there's lots of parodies to the classic Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I've read one to my class several years ago about these three polar bears. The same Goldilocks story, but it was told in the out of the mind of a baby polar bear rather than a baby brown bear, and it was just interesting to hear the same story told in different ways. Put things in the math manipulative area to sort. These are actually important skills needed in literacy also. Engage the kids in conversation, while they're doing these things in the math and manipulative area. Put just fun. Basically, all this is saying, I'm not going to read the rest of this slide here, but basically all this is saying is have lots of fun stuff around the classroom so that while they are building cognitive skills and physical skills and social skills, that they'll also be given the opportunity to talk to other children, to write and to listen and to talk to you. We hope that these children all have great lives at homes, but reality is a lot of them may not. We don't know what type of communication they're getting from their parents, and so when they're in our care, we really need to take the responsibility very, very seriously that we do play a very important part in their lives, and we need to provide for them opportunities in the best ways that we can to help them develop and to help them to grow and help them to build these language skills, because these language skills are going to follow them all through their life. All right, that looks like that is it for the PowerPoint. I know that this was a long one, but it is an 8-hour course, so it's probably just the right length. I hope that we are learning. I love talking about language development. I love talking about literacy and reading. We want to just give these kids lots and lots of opportunity to build a love for words. Put out different types of books. Put out different types of catalogs, put out lots of different age-appropriate magazines so that they can see words in different places. Get them to bring in menus from their favorite restaurants, Cracker Barrel, McDonald's, whatever. Put up things in the classroom like cut out pictures out of magazines of signs of restaurants and stores they go to a whole lot. So environmental print, they know what Walmart sign, what it says. They know what the McDonald's sign says. They know what the Taco Bell sign says. They do. They see it all the time. Give them lots of opportunity to see things and to be proud of themselves for recognizing things. And that pride will give them the courage to move forward and to continue to learn. Okay, again, we're finishing up with language, and if you have any questions or concerns about what's going on, or if there are any little kinks in the computer, let me know and I'll try to get those worked out for you. My email address, as you know, is kbrothers@ches.ua.edu, and my phone number is 205-348-0682, and all of that information is on the course syllabus. Thank you.